can we talk about another book that you had, The War on Small Business?
Sure.
Okay, because that, again, a fascinating topic I'm sure is going to be resonate with our viewers. So what sorts of things like, well, gee, war on small business, what do you mean, Carol?
So the War on Small Business came out of a request from my publisher very early into COVID saying, we think this is going to be a historic economic time and we want somebody to chronicle it. And like a complete idiot, I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. Not realizing, how long this would go on and the
Mhm.
permutations and all the things that would be happening. So, so I decided to write what ended up was like 3.5 books and
Mhm.
went through multiple titles, including The Looting of America and so on and so forth. And, ended up with The War on Small Business. And it was really about the government picking winners and losers, not based on data science or anything else, but good old central planning, political clout and connections. We ended up living through the most historic transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street of all time, enabled by central banks and governments. And, really the pattern of what happened, because I knew that it was going to be erased or people were going to misremember it. And so I really wanted to follow it, along. So the
Mhm.
first part of the book was really that chronicling of what happened. The second part was a lot about how we got here and really the central banks and the government coming together and distorting markets and creating this scenario that really favored that wealthy and well-connected group and centralized power. And for those of us who are looking for freedom and independence and decentralization, the small businesses, the average people, all of that stood for freedom and really, stood against the centralization. That's the sort of the power balance, how that has gotten disrupted and distorted and the implications for that. And then, some solutions, of course, on how we
Mhm.
could potentially, if we had the fortitude, reverse that back. So I think, through my 3 books, what others have identified, and I would agree, is sort of the common thread, is rooting for the underdog, as it
Mhm.
may seem. But it really isn't so much rooting for the underdog as it is just rooting for the equal opportunity for everyone. Obviously, not everyone's going to get the same outcome, and we don't want to try to push that. That's this equity idea, and it's insane. But we want everyone to have the same equal playing field, and we don't want a handful of people picking winners and losers or tilting the playing field to favor one group versus another, which always seems to come at the benefit of the wealthy and well-connected and not the little guy. So it's just ensuring that we have those rights that are protected and that freedom that goes along with the traditional concepts of free markets.
When you are talking about them picking winners and losers, like in the initial stages of the COVID lockdown, do you mean things like what's a quote essential business, and that some of those rulings were kind
Yeah.
of arbitrary, and so you
I
wonder,
mean, they were
gee, yeah,
very arbitrary. I mean, you would have, so they shut down a third of the economy in the United States. Almost all of that was small business. And it was a scenario where you could get your dog groomed and their nails done at PetSmart, but you couldn't get your hair done and your nails groomed at
Mhm.
the small business that was, a few feet away. By the way, the weed dispensaries that had been illegal, a few months or a few years beforehand, and the alcohol stores were all open. And one of the things that this really begot was this continuation of this. If you had shut down the grocery stores, if you had shut down Amazon and they couldn't make deliveries, if you hadn't propped up the stock market like the Fed did, this would have been over in less than
Right.
2 weeks, probably. You wouldn't have made the 15 days because everyone would have been, I can't live like this. The big
Right.
companies would have said, this is enough. But we weren't all in this together. Like the mantra said, the big guys got to benefit in multiple ways directly because their competitors were closed down and those dollars were flowing. And then from the support of the easy money in the market that inflated their values and gave them access to more cheap capital to be able to compete in an unfair way. So that's sort of the most obvious. And there's certainly many,
Mhm.
many examples of this.
Yeah, I remember too that some people were pointing out, like, they didn't let you go to church, but they kept the liquor stores open. It's it's so I can understand, like, these people got to, they need to have the liquor flowing, but other
Yeah.
people might have really wanted to be going to church at that point in time. So
Yeah, you should be able to pray equally to the liquor bottle or in church. They shouldn't be picking a winner or a loser on that front.
Hey, everybody, this is Bob Murphy. Thanks for listening to this clip from the InFi podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing and share this video with others. We've got new episodes dropping every Friday with more insightful discussions. Stay tuned.